my activism began a lot earlier than the Steelworkers Union. I was about 8 years old when my mother basically enrolled me in the civil rights movement. She was very active in civil rights, the civil rights movement, and wanted my older sister and I also to be active. And part of it was she was a single mother who needed to take her children along, but she actually more so wanted us to really understand what was going on and to see for ourselves what that movement was about, and to be active in it. So at about the age of 8, I became an activist with my mother in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the civil rights movement. And from that work over a number of years, doing a whole range of tasks, I learned quite a bit. And later, when we moved to Washington, D.C., in 1966, within a couple of years, when I was in high school, I actually became a student activist on my own. And from there, I kind of took off in other directions.
My name is Sabina Virgo, and I'm going to be chairing this meeting this evening. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable up here. I was hoping we'd sort of be in a circle, but maybe we can make this work. This is the second meeting that we have had, that this group has had, following up on the disclosures which were made about the crack-Contra connection. We had discussed how many issues in our society get a lot of publicity all of a sudden, and then they go into the back burner, and something else is in the news, and something else is in our minds. And we felt that this issue has such enormous implications for our society and has caused so very much pain, and really needs to be challenged and confronted, and that we need to demand full disclosure of what our government is doing and has done, and that we need to organize to do that. So we had a meeting at a place called the Southern California Library for Social Studies and Research to discuss the implications and the results of the crack trail leading to South Central Los Angeles. And to do that, we had a man who himself was a political activist who became hooked on crack and talked about what that meant to him. We had a discussion about a family in Nicaragua who had also suffered because of the drugs in their country and what those connections are. From that meeting, we broke into two groups. One group mandate was to discuss a demonstrative action that would be taken in Los Angeles to show and to mobilize our resistance to this, our demand that our government fully disclose its role in this and that that role be ended. We had another group that was discussing how to network among each other and how to root this issue within our various communities, so that meetings like the meeting we had at the Southern California Library could be reproduced throughout the city, so that this issue becomes something that is part of all of us and part of all our work. It's not an issue that's out here. It's an issue that's fundamental to how our government has been proceeding both in foreign policy and in domestic policy. So tonight is a meeting that is to talk about a proposed demonstration, to talk about how to network in our communities, and how to keep this issue on the front burner, and how to keep the pressure on the government and on some of the news media that has been attempting to whitewash this.
Kwazi Nkrumah, I'm for the Green Party of Los Angeles.
The majority of these movements also happen to be very white-led. Do you find that these concerns to be true?
Yeah, they are. I mean, and I think that to be fair and to be honest, I mean, all of us generally begin our activism wherever we find ourselves, whatever community, whatever traditions we come from is generally where we start. When you begin to become a social activist, you begin to become aware of how diverse the population of this country is, and the fact that so many issues as well take on a global or international character. And so that forces us eventually to begin to look at how do we begin to translate this work, how do we begin to connect this work with a lot of other forces and communities that are not necessarily the same as our own. And that imposes the need to become more aware of what is going on with other communities, beginning to communicate with other forces and exchange information. It means doing your homework, becoming more knowledgeable about other people's experiences. You know, when I was in the Steelworkers Union, most of the environmental groups I heard about were mostly white middle class, and the class issue is another issue there. But when I was in the Steelworkers Union, I became involved with environmental issues on my job, as many people do. And, you know, many of the environmental groups really didn't address the question of how people were being affected by the environment where they worked. I worked in a steel plant where we were exposed to a lot of carcinogens daily, just in the process of doing what was largely heavy manual work. And I helped to start a health and safety committee that addressed that. And I was very clear that these were basic environmental issues for us, but they didn't generally fall within the perspective of many groups that identified themselves as being environmental. And that largely was a function of there, in that case, of class, as well as race, to the extent that applied. And in most communities, there are serious environmental issues. And in fact, what I would say is that in poor or working class communities, the environmental issues are usually much more severe and immediate. They are not necessarily the macro issues, but they're the issues that right directly in front of people, whether that's because there's oil drilling in their community, whether it is a question of health and safety on their job or what have you. And so, you know, there's a lot of room for making those connections if you have the awareness to do it. But in many cases, the awareness is what is lacking, not the question of actually having a means or a basis to have an organic link. Better or worse, I mean, we generally become aware of these questions in the process of doing our work. And often our awareness is stimulated by conflicts that develop around the work and issues that are raised about whether it is actually being applied equitably or with sensitivity or at all in relation to people's particular circumstances. So, you know, awareness often comes at a price, and the price is often, unfortunately, you know, some discomfort from the fact that insufficiencies in our work or conflicts in our work force us to confront certain issues.
For jobs, justice, and peace, occupy the hood and occupy LA. We are here today to salute Dr. King and to thank him for teaching us that we can stand together and struggle and change our condition if we stand up for what is right and let no force deter us. We are the Martin Luther King Coalition for jobs, justice, and peace. Occupy the hood and occupy LA.